Something I like to do is a little twist of the wrist so you can get a little point. That way when you slap it on, there is no air trapped underneath. Slap it on as best you can in the center. If it's not perfectly in the center, you can always stop the wheel, slightly push it, but try to get it in the center as best you can. And we're still on step 1, so get the wheel moving. Add water to your hands and the clay. The clay should always be glistening before you touch it. So if you don't see it glistening, don't touch it. All right, so we're still on step 1, stick the clay. So we want to secure the clay. I'm gonna push my chest over the piece. All my upper body weight is over the clay, and I'm going to push down. My hands are in a cupping motion, and I'm pushing down, and my ring finger on the right hand is sealing the bottom like that. So now we can see that the piece has been blended into the bat, so it's not going to go anywhere. All right, so that was step 1. Step 2 is probably the hardest step, and it's centering the clay. So as you can see, it's kind of moving around, it's wobbling, it's not centered. So we want to make sure that this thing looks like it's staying still while it's spinning. So basically we're going to take our elbow and anchor it over here, and we're going to push diagonally. So I like to envision a cross. We're going this way. So all of this should be touching the bat. This should be pushing the clay. So this guy is going diagonal. This guy is going down. So it's a fist going down, and both hands need to be connected. So this is what you should be doing. And we're going to push down with my chest. Meanwhile, my elbow is anchored. And you should basically start to see it flatten on the top and flatten on the side. Okay. Sometimes you'll get a little clay skirt, so you'll see the clay kind of traveling on the bat. You can basically take your sponge right at the bottom and push it back in. That way you can position your hand correctly. But most of the pressure is being pushed here. So again, the left hand is pushing diagonally, the right hand is pushing down. As you can see now, it's not moving or wobbling. Another thing you can do to check, just put your finger right here. It is kind of touching me a little bit in one area and not, so I can keep going to make it perfect. All right, that should be good. Now we can move on to open. You're gonna take your thumbs and you're gonna push down. You want your fingers to be cupped. You don't want them to be like this because you want to control the clay. And in all these steps, my elbows are anchored onto me. So you should kind of be like a little dinosaur, T-Rex. I have a little T-Rex on my poster in my private studio. So basically, we're gonna be like a drill, and we're gonna go down and open this hole. So it's best if you have the knuckles touching as well. All right, make sure it's wet. Push down. Don't separate your thumbs. All right. A little bit of an air bubble in there. Sometimes air bubbles can mess you up, but you should try your best to ignore them unless they're pretty big. Okay, so we're still going in. We're gonna go deep. We wanna have water in there so that we can slide through better. And once you've reached, we probably wanna have like a fingernail deep at the bottom of clay. I will help you figure out where that is, but you don't want to go too deep either because then you'll have a hole in your piece. Okay, now we're ready for the W, widen. So you want to widen the hole to be about 3 inches wide. We're making bowls, I assume, today. It's one of the easier forms. So we're going to do the turtle hand. So middle finger is a hook shape. You're going to have your other hand on top. Again, middle finger hook shape. So now you have double the strength because you have 2 middle fingers. You don't want to go down. You want to pull like an elastic band. And again, my elbows are anchored. So I'm going to pull that pretty slow but strong. Okay. All right, we're ready for the last step. You can see that there's like a tiny bit that's a little bit lower and a little bit of it being lower here. We want to compress before we move on. So compressing means you're pressing the clay, you're taking out the water, and this is to prevent S-cracks, if you guys are familiar with that. S-cracks happen when you don't compress and you leave water in the middle for too long. Okay, so from this point forward, you don't want to have a pool of water in here anymore. All right, once we've done that, we can move on to the last step, which is lift the walls. So this is the harder part as well. So I'd say probably centering and lifting the walls are the harder steps. We want to have water inside and out. And remember, last step, slow down the wheel. Okay, so everyone has a different way of lifting the walls. Some people do the crab hands. They're pinching with their thumbs and their fingers, and they pull up the walls this way. Again, elbows are anchored. But most people, they work on the right side. So you can envision that cross again. We're working right here. We're not working over here, so don't let it take you. And we're not working over here too close to you. So right on the right side of it. And you're basically pinching, like I was saying earlier, but with two hands instead of one. So you want to have fingertip on the outside, fingertip on the inside. You want to squeeze and keep it moving. My hands are connected so that they move in unison. If they were not connected, they might start going like this and be a little bumpy. So you want to keep them connected. All right, so I'm gonna pinch. I'm gonna push a little bit more with my left hand because you want to get that curve. And this hand is kind of staying strong. All right, so I go in, pushing, pushing, and you want to keep it moving. That's the key. If I were to stay in one spot for too long, it would make this really thin right at that spot. So you want to be careful for that. You want to just keep moving. All right, so everyone has a different way of doing this. My way is with a sponge to make it glide easier. I use my pointer finger, and I call it the L hand. So I use my middle finger in here, and my thumb is touching. So as long as your hands are touching somehow, it will work. So this is my way of attaching my hands. I stay at the bottom a little bit longer and I start pulling. It's a little bit of an air bubble in there, so it's kind of making the rim a little bit wonky. If you have a needle tool, you can fix that. Just grabbing that real quick. Okay, so you want to do this step probably a total of like 5 times from what I've seen for beginners, to make sure you grab all the clay from the bottom and bring it to the top. So right now, the clay is about this thick at the bottom, and up here it's like half thinner. So you want to make sure that the entire piece has the same thickness. So I'm going to stay at the bottom a little bit longer and bring it up. Once you're done, you can compress again the bottom. Make sure there's no water. Make sure that you kind of wipe away the water from the inside and the outside of your piece so that it's not soaking. We want to make sure that we don't get any cracking. And you can take your wire tool and take it off. Yeah. So this, I'm going to cut mine in half so we can see if I did a good job of bringing the clay up. If you look at the inside, it's a good visual, but it should be all the same thickness, just a little bit thicker at the bottom because we need to trim a foot, but the entire wall should be roughly the same thickness.
And if you wedge your clay a little bit, when you get your chunk of clay, that I didn't have my lab tech wedge it beforehand. Hence the air bubble.
Gotcha. Yeah, see, so I accidentally went too far in the middle here, so I cut right through, so there's a hole, and I'm gonna cut mine in half here. Okay. All right, so yep, you see how it's kind of roughly the same thickness of the wall, a little bit thicker at the bottom. That's what we're looking for. This side seems a little weird, but this side seems pretty good. So yeah, that's basically it.